Security scan. Please stand by. Scanning. Do not move. Security scan successful. You now have full access to all files. Welcome to Conspiracies, Inc. With your host, Brian Dattilo. Do you believe?
I am Brian Dattilo, and this is Conspiracies, Inc. Thank you for joining us for our very first season as we tackle the alien cover-up, the alien controversy, the alien conspiracy. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And if this is your first time watching, I'll catch you up really quick. The first two episodes and pretty much the reason why I did the whole podcast is because I did get abducted in 1993. And I had a wonderful lady named Yvonne Smith. She was gracious enough to come in and put me under hypnosis for the first two episodes. And it was a great experience. So if you missed that, you got to go back and watch that. And of course, we had David Shorter, the UCLA professor, a very good friend of mine. He came in, he teaches the ghost, aliens, and psychics class. He came in, we had a great time with him. Don Schmidt, the Roswell connoisseur, aficionado authority of Roswell. Don Schmidt was here. He runs the Roswell Museum in Roswell, New Mexico. He had a great episode. My mother was here from the National Enquirer in her days, telling her stories. And that's a must-see event. You got to listen to that too. And that leads us into another must-have event. If you're going to do an alien podcast, you've got to profile MUFON, which is pretty much the only agency outside the government that has ever tackled any of this. And it gives people a place to call and give their experiences to. And my guest is Ruben Uriarte. Did I say that right? Uriarte?
Yes.
Ruben.
You said it really good.
Ruben is the director of MUFON in Northern California. He is our guest today. We're fortunate enough to have him. And Ruben, thank you for joining us. It's our pleasure to have such a distinguished guest from MUFON join us. And I know you've been doing it quite a while. So tell us a little bit about how you got involved and what is it you do?
Brian, I'm retired now. Primarily taking care of my mother and family members, and we're all involved in this. But prior to that, I've had a variety of positions that I worked in healthcare and security. I did a lot of disaster management way back as well. But over the years, I've always been very, very much interested in the whole topic of UFOs, and like mainly because of my experience, and like a lot of people, as you know, Brian, they get involved in this mainly because they know somebody or they had their own personal experience. And for me, I had my first sighting of an object. It was oval shaped up in the sky. Mind you, this was back in the 50s. But
early 1950s?
Later 50s. And
I don't want to date you, but about how old were you?
Jesus, I think I was in between six or seven, I think.
Okay.
Might have been a little older, but the reason why I remember that is that I was standing right next door to where we lived was a library, and I love that place. I used to go in there, and the very first word I learned was dinosaur, and the librarians were really great, so they really helped me to keep my mind open on lots of things. So I was standing close to and there was a little park with the library, and I was standing there on the school grounds there, the playground. Mm-hmm. And I saw this. I thought it was a balloon, but I kept looking at it, and I said, "That's strange. It looks almost invisible, but why is it not moving?" And then I had like this eerie feeling like I was being watched. Well, then I think a couple of weeks later, I was with my friends. We're playing in that playground,
right?
And then all of a sudden, my friend pointed straight up into the sky, and and he said, "Look, a flying saucer." And I looked up, and I didn't see it, but I just felt something go by. And Brian, I said, I wonder if it was connected to that oval-shaped object that I saw previously.
Where was this, Ruben? What's
in Oakland?
Okay.
It was in Oakland, yes. And since then, it just stayed with me. And like a big imprint. I always was fascinated with science and the science fiction and that. And I never would have dreamed that I would later join a UFO organization, and that was kind of weird how it happened too. Because
well, let's stop you there real quick, because I want to briefly touch on when we talked earlier a couple days ago. We had a little pre-screen phone interview, right?
Yeah.
And I'm talking to you, minding my own business outside of my backyard. And what do I see? Remember, I described it. I said, it looks like a balloon coming in. And I said, Ruben, you're going to think I'm crazy, but I think I'm talking to MUFON and seeing a UFO at the same time. And then you told me to take a picture of it. And it was oval shaped. I did think it was a balloon. I knew it wasn't a plane. And I sent you the picture. And I also sent Sam Morano, another MUFON representative from Illinois, and you know him very well. I sent him the picture too, because he was curious about, us talking, and he couldn't believe it, and he sent it in to be enhanced.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so we're going to get a close look at it. But it's weird that as I was talking to you before our interview, before the Zoom meeting, here I see a UFO. But go ahead, continue. Tell us how you got started in MUFON. Is it a volunteer basis in MUFON? I know.
Yes, we're a nonprofit organization. We're not connected with the government. The organization was founded in 1969. We're a large organization. We have close to 4,000 or 5,000 members, and we also we're also involved as international as well, which I also assist on international cases.
Right.
But going back to your that experience, here we are talking, and I remember it was right around this time, 3 o'clock. That's what I remember, and then I remember you saying, it's just staying there. It's not moving. It's just, like it, I don't know if it was hovering or what, but it wasn't moving.
And it came in moving. It came in pretty quick. But as soon as it got, and I hate to be narcissistically egocentric, but it stopped right above me.
Yeah. That is. I was going to ask you if have you tried going back out there again, and if so, bring some binoculars or.
Oh, Ruben, come on! I got my night vision binoculars here. It's all I do at night. Around twilight. I usually don't see a lot during the day, but at night, I do see stuff at night. I go out early in the morning, before the sun comes up, and it's very active. There's a lot of things I know aren't satellites. I have apps on my phones that describe the space station, where it is, the planets. All that's ruled out when it goes onto a UFO. There's no identification for that. So, so you volunteered, and you've been volunteering since, what was it, 1993 you started?
No, I think 1990. I think I got close to 30 years now. I became certified as a field investigator back in '92. So I moved up the ranks, Brian.
How do you?
I was field investigator.
How do you?
Can you repeat that again? Basically, with our MUFON, although it's a little more comprehensive now, but back then we took an exam. It was an open book. We would buy the manual and study it, and then we would take the exam, and you have to have a passing score of 80%, and later it would be reviewed, and then your state director or whoever's in charge would get you on a couple of case assignments, and then you would be later certified as a field investigator, and then it would be ongoing. So pretty much that's how we have it, except now we have a MUFON University, which
Wow.
if you go to MUFON.com and if you're interested in becoming a field investigator, there's a whole process involved. But basically, you take these courses online and then take your exam, and then later be certified. We're going to be reevaluating that whole process. We have, by the way, a annual international symposium, and we're holding it in Las Vegas coming up at the end of the month. I believe it's August 27th through 29th. We also hold field investigator training, and so for those who are interested, check out our website, MUFON.com.
Okay.
And you'll get to see the variety of speakers in
What a perfect reason to go to Vegas.
that. Yeah.
Now, Ruben, tell us real quick, and some of the things we haven't touched on this show yet. And I noticed that when I did my research on you, that you've done some stuff with crop circles. You've had some crop circle investigations, and you've had a lot of investigations with alien crash sites outside of Roswell, from New Mexico to Texas, post Roswell. Is there anything you can tell us that highlights either your crop circle research or your research into alien crash sites outside of Roswell, post Roswell?
Yeah. Let me focus on the crop circle arena first. There, I was very fascinated with the whole crop circle phenomena, and when I had met a number of investigators and researchers, some that live in LA, but they go to England during the summertime. And you know, Brian, a lot of the things I get into, it's because of what's the word I'm trying to say? It's not by accident.
Right.
You know, things happen for a reason. And so what happened was I was, for some reason, I wanted to go to England, and I just talked to a friend of mine. She said, "Oh yeah, check out this tour group," and I read the information. And I said, you know, I think I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I contacted the owner, and she said, yeah. She said, oh, by the way, we have some other tours. We're going to be going to Puerto Rico too. I thought, well, sign me up for that. So I go to England and meet people on our tour, and then we're doing some night watches. And I had these powerful pair of binoculars, and all of a sudden, and I said to myself, I said, I put it out there. It says, if you wish, should you appear, do so because you want to, not because I asked you, but should you appear, I thank you. Pretty much how I said it.
Yep.
And so I'm there on top of this hill, and all of a sudden there was like this ball of light that starts rising, and I'm looking at it, and I said, holy cow, what is that? And then I looked through my binoculars, and I looked like a half dome. It was like a bright amber color, you know, golden amber, but it had a dome curvature to it.
Yep.
And then it started to descend, and then I've said to myself, so I got on the whistle. I started blowing my whistle to get everyone's attention, and people start running up. And then I said to myself, man, I wish they would reappear again so my friends could see them.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, Brian, is boom, boom, boom. There were 3 of them. And I'm looking through the binoculars, and they look identical. And my friends were staring at them. And then one of the gentlemen that was on our tour group was a professional photographer, and he raises his camcorder and he starts to film it. And then something inside me said, hey, I don't think they're going to permit themselves to be filmed. And sure enough, as soon as he raises his camcorder, blip, 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 they disappeared. And I said, holy cow. So the next day, we went out to that area, and I found out that there was this hill named Golden Ball Hill, and coincidentally, it's just that in that area of England, there's a lot of ancient archaeological sites and that, and the fact that it was called Golden Ball Hill was no coincidence. So we went out and we met some people toward the direction of where we saw the balls of light, and then we found this field. And Brian, this was incredible. The crop circle that we found was fresh, and it looked like a galaxy. It had a spirals, and it had columns of standing wheat. I mean, and the weirdest thing about it was when you walk on it, the wheat was like weaved, and it was bent, but there was a space above it, so where we had a couple of inches before it actually above the ground. So when you're walking on it, it's like you're walking on a carpet.
Wow.
Or very soft. That blew me away. That was on my first crop circle expedition. So
how long does the average crop circle last?
That's a good question. You mean like once it appears?
Yeah. How long does the imprint stay on the ground? Does that vary?
It may last for a couple. It varies, and this is what's the weird thing that I've seen is that the farmers they're upset with having people going into their field because people trample along, damage the crops and that. However, they'll it's time for harvesting, and they'll go right over the crop circle. Many times they'll go ahead and eliminate the crop, but you still have the image, you still have the imprint. That is what's has been so fascinating.
And the electromagnetics.
Pardon me?
And also the electromagnetic fields that are generated sometimes by these are
absolutely
radioactive in some sense.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. The best way to see the crop circles is to fly over them, either by helicopter or a small plane, or in some cases an ultralight, and I've done all three. The ultralight is pretty much bumpy, but it kind of spooky as well when you're flying over it. But you get some fantastic photos. And with that, I was able to see, the imprints. Well, once you can see where the farmers went right over it with their harvesters, and you're able to see still the location. Now, I've been told from other friends that have been other researchers that have been there, that's put a lot more time into the subject. They say that wheat that's been exposed to whatever energy, as he had mentioned, tends to grow faster.
Okay.
And the other thing that's come out of it is that in some cases, and I've done this, I've been able to help out some of the researchers in collecting samples. You collect the soil samples as well as the samples of the wheat. You look for anything that may have like a blown node, like it's a small hole. It's like what's the belief is that it's being hit by this high energy, and it's causing the liquids inside the stem of that to burst open. Wow. And that's kind of an indicator there, as well as sometimes there might be some cellular changes to the plant itself. So what you want to do is take collections inside and take collections outside, and then you want to do a comparison. And so if you get changes, obviously growth or even the soil inside, then you know that there's some sort of energy at work, whatever that is, for whatever purpose. That's still part of the mystery.
Well, one of my favorite crop circle case or crop circle that I saw, I don't know if it's legit. I heard it may not be. I heard it was possible hoax. Was I know that in 1974, Frank Drake, Carl Sagan sent out a message to space, basically in binary code, from Puerto Rico, actually, and on radio waves. And they got a response in the year 2000 in Hampshire, England, in the UK, about this crop circle, that it was a binary code response to the one that was sent out in regards to alien location, population, DNA helix, nuclear type element codes, numbering systems, kind of comparing, answering our message. In this crop circle, there was also a face that appeared in the same crop circle. And I was wondering if you heard anything about that. Is it something that you're familiar with? Is it something that you've studied? I think it was called the aerobica message.
Oh, Arecibo.
Arecibo.
Yeah, that's the name of the planetarium, or the radar disc in Puerto Rico.
In Puerto Rico.
The observatory, yes.
And I guess they pointed this message at M13, this star cluster, supposedly in the Hercules constellation. And then there was a response through a crop circle explaining their end of that. Is that something that you're familiar with? Is something that you consider to be accurate or credible?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the movie that it'll come to me in a moment there. That was, I'm having to see,
Because I know
I'm trying to remember the title of that movie, but they filmed it in Arecibo.
The crop circle in 2001. But I know that 2000 was supposed to be when the first crop circle was there. But then I guess somebody tried to hoax it the next year and they recreated it in 2001.
Yeah, going back to that one where that stipulates the DNA, I too come across other researchers that think it was a hoax. I have to tell you though, that thing, it is so complex, and then it's very different from many of the other crop circles that I've seen and been able to enter. Because this one is almost like a digital imprint.
Right.
Totally. It's still up in the air. It just really most of when it comes to crop circles, it just depends on who you talk to, what their background is, and asking, well, how do you verify it? And then you just make up your mind whether you accept the information. I try to keep it open anyway, because things do change.
Right, and
but
I've seen stuff where they have the stick and the rope, and they push down on the stick, and it leans the crop down, and it's how they make fake crop circles. They just go in this pattern. But this was scientifically answered. So these people also are what? Scientists? That didn't make any sense to me, that they would know planetary alignment. They would know where the location, they would know population. They would know to put that in binary code. That doesn't sound too probable to me.
Yeah, and it's such a sophisticated image.
Yeah.
And then when you deal with crop circles, you're dealing with, I've learned so much in terms of the patterns when it comes to geometry, sacred geometry, fractal geometry. And you see that, and you said, how in the heck are they able to complete something? And then not only that, it's the size of these things. There's been a variety of the crop circles that I've entered, which could be close to, well, the biggest one was probably, and I flew over a helicopter. It seemed to be more than a mile in length.
That's
It's incredible the different sizes. So the question is, well, if people are actually making it, then why haven't they been caught? Some have, but at the same time, these images are being prepared, are being developed in farmland, and it isn't until early in the morning that they're discovered. One thing I wanted to share with you, Brian, on the topic of crop circles, the ones that really fascinate me the most, me personally, is the ones here in the United States and Canada, especially. And the reason why I say that is that many times we get reports from the farmers, and they're way out there in they're harvesting, and then all of a sudden there's a complex pattern. And then my question is, why would anyone spend their time and resources go way out there, and then they see this complex pattern? And then we also get reports from pilots that are small, that are flying small planes, of course, and they see it and they report it. There is one organization, the International Research Crop Circle Association, but the focus is on the crop circles that appear here in the Midwest, like in Ohio, Illinois, Missouri, in the Midlands as well. So to me, I find that fascinating compared to, again, we have a number of crop circles in England that are on farmland, but they're also on major roads. And so there's always that kind of question there. But this is me personally, I'm fascinated with the ones that are found way out there, and then they're reported either by the farmers or maybe a pilot.
Yeah, it seems to me it's one of those things where it's so easy to come up with excuses to how they're made and why they're there, other than looking at the fact that they're made by aliens. Some crop circles are messages, some are imprints of actual spacecraft. So I think that people need to kind of look at the obvious instead of looking at all the other stuff that might be a possibility.
Yeah, right now we're in crop circle season, so usually around September, it's toward the end in the harvest time, and there's either one or two that they call the grand finale. It's like one of the most, are the images that are most spectacular. So if you watch on Crop Circle Connector, it's a great website that I recommend. It keeps tabs, not just crop circles in England, but throughout the world as well. There was that word I remember that escaped me, and it's called synchronicity. That's what I wanted to say, Brian.
Synchronicity.
A lot of my involvement in this, there seems to be this synchronistic door that opens up, and then I said, wow, I'm grateful for the experience, but I would never have found it had it not been for the whole synchronicity that's usually involved in this. That's just my opinion.
I think you're right. There is no coincidence. There is no coincidence. What can you tell us as far as crash sites of alien ships outside of Roswell, maybe in the past, I don't know, 50 years, 60 years? Is there anything that stands out as almost comparable to Roswell, or something that we should know about? Are there a number of alien crash sites that are covered up in your experience in the last 40 years? Or is that something that is quickly taken care of by the government?
I'd say a little bit of both, but my focus in the whole crop circle, in the crash retrieval, was also partly due to synchronicity. I was involved with the History Channel. We were doing a focus on UFO activity in Mexico,
Okay.
And I've been involved in a whole network of organizations there in Mexico. And one of the cases that came up was it happened in Coyame, Chihuahua, Mexico, where a small airplane collided with the UFO. And this happened back in 1974. And the way we learned about it was there was a document called the Deneb report. And it was basically what we were trying to figure out, that it was an inside document. It was a document that described how the object had crashed. There was a down UFO. Mexican soldiers were involved in trying to retrieve the airplane, and they accidentally found a small disc. And throughout this period of time, they were being monitored by CIA, as well as primarily CIA, but also through U.S. military. They were listening in, and the soldiers. And I'm just giving you just an overall brief summary of this particular case, Brian. But the Mexican soldiers got the object, and they were able to put it on a flatbed truck, and they had like a convoy. They were going back to their main base. We have two possibilities where they were going to take that disc, and then the convoy stopped suddenly. A U.S. reconnaissance plane flew by, and they noticed that there were a number of people or soldiers laying on the ground. So this kicked off an immediate response, where helicopters from Fort Bliss, Texas, or four Hueys and one Sea Stallion. And a Sea Stallion is a big Marine helicopter that is used for rescuing downed pilots out in the ocean, as well as in the jungles and that. Okay. So they sent these helicopters into the Mexican airspace, and when they arrived, they were wearing the American soldiers were wearing biological suits, and that means that they were prepared, and they've done this before. They went in and examined the pilots, and they examined the bodies, found they were all dead. So they were able to strap the craft back on the big large Sea Stallion helicopter, and they flew back across the border back into another area there on the U.S. mainland, and in North Texas. It was part of West Texas. So what we found out was that they took that saucer possibly to Atlanta, Georgia, and the question is, why Atlanta, Georgia? And then we began thinking that the Center of Disease Control, they have these specialized labs, is located there in Atlanta. So it might be that the craft was taken, or perhaps that the Mexican soldiers may have died from some sort of exposure, biological exposure, or might have been radiation or something that killed them all. That led us to finding out more about other crashes. We came across another crash of a UFO back in 1948, where supposedly two jets shot down an object and it crashed on the Mexican side of the border.
Right. And
then this one other case also was very fascinating to me, Brian. It's a case that happened. We think it happened in 1955. This was told to us by the pilot that was actually involved in that particular incident. But the pilot was a captain, and his name is Willingham, Robert Willingham, and he and his air group were flying escort for a group of at that time were B-47 bombers, and they were doing some Cold War exercises. He was flying an F-86 Sabre, So these were the jets of the 50s, and they were told that there was an object coming due south. It was reported by the Defense Early Warning Network up there by Canada, and this object was going southbound toward the United States, and then it was actually coming close to their flight route, which was they were flying over part of West Texas.
Okay.
So the object was coming. They were told, and Willingham saw it, and he noticed the big bright light, and then he noticed all these sparkles, and then the object made a left-hand turn, 90-degree turn, and it crashed on the other side of the on the Mexican side of the border. So he got permission from his aircraft to fly down to examine what was going on. And he flew over the crash site, and he could see that there were parts of the object. So he was starting to get low on fuel, and asked if he can go back to his base, and that he would try to come back to the crash site and examine or locate the actual crash. So he arrived back at Carl's Air Force Base, and then he and another friend of his were able to fly back in one of these small little trainers, small called a Veronica. You know, they look like a Cessna, but they're very small planes. That he was able to fly back to the crash site, and when he got there, he had encountered a number of Mexican soldiers that were protecting the crash site to form a perimeter. So when he approached the wreckage, he was confronted by several Mexican army officials, and they told him they were there waiting for someone from the United States Air Force. And what's that?
Ask you, what's the chain of command there? Is the chain of command already understood that if anything's found in Mexico, they call us? I mean, are we at the top of the food chain when it comes to alien crash sites?
I believe so, and we found some interesting evidence of that, because when he made that remark, we found out later that there was also someone from the CIA that was also in that group once American officials started to arrive, and it told us that there is definitely a relationship between the top level governments, probably not just within Mexico, but also in other parts of the world where there's other crashes that have occurred. So there was one. I'm going to jump the gun, but anyway, that was in 1955, and before I ended there, one interesting thing that Robert did was when he walked back to his plane, because he was told that he needed to leave, and it was getting dark, and he had to get that airplane back and then fly it back. He saw a small piece of metal, and he was able to take it, wrap it up, and take it back with him. And he knew a lot about metals. He worked in the oil industry there, and his father taught him a lot about metallurgy. So he tried to cut it with a welding torch and all that, and it wouldn't bend, it wouldn't break. He did everything to it, and he took it to a lab, a military lab, which they took it, and on his way, about a week or so, he inquired about the lab, and they told him that the lab didn't exist. There was no one there, so he never got his metal back.
Oh man!
And so that was another part of the evidence there. There's some of the parallels there with Roswell when he talked about crash retrievals and collection of debris and that.
Metal that doesn't burn, it doesn't cut, it's got memory, it's lightweight, it's It's were there any markings on the metal, any writings on the metal that he had?
On this particular piece that he had, it was honeycomb. It had a specific design to it. For those that are interested, they can go to our website. It's roswellbooks.com.
Huh?
And my good friend Noe Torres, who helped me, who we worked together on the research of crash retrievals. We have written a series of books on crash retrievals in Mexico. And he is also co-authored with a couple of other authors on the whole subject of the history of down UFOs to go back to the 1800s.
Right.
So yeah, for those that are interested, and in there, when you go to the other Roswell, that's the title of our book. You can hit that, and you can see the different images, and also you can read up on, in general, about what happened with that specific case. So with these down, and there's also been other UFO crashes throughout the Southwest. And now the big question, Brian, is why are they crashing? What is it that's causing them to crash? And then here we are. We suspect we've got 3, but there might have been 2 other crashes. All seem to be along the border from Mexico going right toward the Texas, right around across the Rio Grande. We don't really know why. If we did, obviously, that means that we would have a heck of a lot more information to share. But
it does follow the deep underground military base stretch in that area, correct? I mean, most of that land is government-owned land that they crash on, correct?
Oh well, in this particular case, it's in barren desert, isolated. That's one. We haven't found any particular incidents of anything crashing in a major urban area. They tend to be out in remote country, which could mean that these crafts that are flying between Mexico and the United States, they may tend to be flying in an area that's more isolated, and they try to stay away from the large military installations.
Got it.
You fly, and I think the reason why is that we're going to shoot them down, or try to shoot them down. And and now we're starting to hear incidents from Navy pilots, Air Force pilots, of encounters where the flight systems are actually turned off. The weapons flight systems are somehow manipulated to where they don't activate whenever you. So that tells us that we're dealing with an intelligence that's way beyond. And now that we're dealing with the Pentagon and their release that UFOs are real, it just totally opens the door to a lot more questions. I mean, we have all these old cases, historical cases that go back, but one wonders what's in the database, if they're keeping the database. What about all those other cases that we're not aware of? I don't know if we'll ever know, but it'll be very interesting, Brian, to see where we will go with this. I believe there's going to be another update coming up in the next month or so to the Senate, and on the whole question of UAPs, and unidentified aerial phenomena, which is the new term,
right,
or the term that they are most using.
Ruben, do you think that is MUFON more of a target for what they know outside the government? Does MUFON ever get harassed by the government? Does the government ever ask for certain files of investigation? I know that MUFON is not a government institution, but are they ever put through the same ringer as even military pilots that describe these encounters? You know, does MUFON get visited by the men in black?
Those are good questions, but to my knowledge, no.
I mean, in all seriousness, it would be scary.
Yeah, no, there's definitely, we have to be really careful when you're investigating a case, and then this is where we get feedback and the support from our higher officials if we're on dangerous ground or where it might be a national security issue.
Right.
Obviously, we need to be very, very cautious of that, conscious of that. And at the same time, we also need to take precautions for ourselves too. There might be some other cases where something unusual has happened, but I'm not aware of. But I'm sure that if you were to maybe speak to Sam. Sam's in the same level that I am, state director, and we know that work with Sam. I was with an organization, still a member of it, called NARCAP, National Aviation Center, National Aviation Reporting Center for Anomalous Phenomena, NARCAP. We were focusing in on the O'Hare incident, the O'Hare Airport.
Wow.
And we're collecting data from that because the flight crews, they observed this strange object that was hovering right over one of the terminals there. Oh. And it was actually seen by pilots and air and ground personnel as well. And they reported it. And then there seemed to be a very seemed to be a cover-up because you weren't able to get the information. There seemed to be a lockdown where employees weren't able to share their information yet. And so those things do happen. You get, especially in a major event, like Phoenix, for example, 1997.
Yeah.
Where you have a large boomerang object seen by several thousand people, and then you start getting inquiries from or testimonies from the city officials or military that they were just flares.
Yeah.
There always seems to be an excuse. Now we're starting to see that they don't know what we're dealing with. That's the question now. Is our pilots are encountering these objects, and it could be very dangerous because it could be possible collision. These objects are known to affect the flight instruments, which becomes an aviation safety issue, and it also our big concern is the commercial airlines. I mean, there's been so many reports in the past where these objects are flying either close to the airports, which becomes a security threat as well as a safety issue, or they're flying by the runways, or they're flying toward the flight paths of these planes. So with that, now that the questions are starting to raise, in this brief report that was presented to the Senate, they believe there was 144 cases, and one they were able to explain as a balloon, but the rest they had no explanations.
Right.
And so that is I don't know. We'll ever find out what exactly what incidents were involved, but the big question now, Brian, is that okay, so they do exist, and we know they're not from China, they're not from Russia,
right?
So who are they, and where are they from, and the fact that these objects have such technological superiority over our planes, and the fact that they fly from space into our airspace and then into the ocean. And now you're starting to hear of cases. So I think we're going to be getting, hopefully we'll be receiving some more data and more testimony. And I think especially among our military people that have retired may be also another great source of information. But the Pentagon is now trying to encourage its pilots, our military, to share their information of anything unusual. Now, what they do with it, that's the other thing. I'm going to be very, very interested in that. We have some really good people like you've probably heard of Lou Elizondo, who are former military now, now civilians, but they're starting to work together with other people, other co-workers, people that used to work in the government. Now they're also sharing.
After all this time, since Aurora, Texas in 1896, when the UFO hit the windmill in Aurora, Texas, from then to now, the government's finally even getting on the same page with each other, because there's times in the past where they were policing even the military to not come forward. So I guess it's a step in the right direction that they're trying to get the military all on the same page to say, yes, it is for sure an occurrence that we don't understand. I personally feel like they know more than that, but at least they're giving us that much. At least they're identifying it, recognizing it, and not fighting amongst themselves to keep it quiet. It's more like, let's open it up, because we know for a fact it's been going on over 100 years, so why not just be honest about it? And to have agencies like MUFON, which are pretty much the only lifeline that people have to report something without being judged, without being ridiculed, without, some weird effect happening. It's such a gift to have an organization like MUFON doing that, because it puts a light on it in a realistic way that needs to be there. So you guys are doing an excellent job, just putting it to the forefront and bringing it into the light and making sure people know that it's a legitimate thing. It's not something that can be laughed at anymore. It's not weather balloons. It's not flares. These are, these days with technology and video the way it is, it's undeniable. So it's good that the government is thinking about coming clean, and it's good that agencies like the one that you're associated with even is existing to help us through that. Because otherwise, what do we have? Who do we call?
It'll be really fascinating. Hopefully it'll happen, and we'll have public hearings. This way, people that are everyone will be able to share their experiences, hopefully, at these hearings, civilians and organizations like ours, and a number of other groups that we need to work together, keep our network going, and keep this in the forefront, because it will definitely it has an impact to our society. If we could learn who they are, what they are doing, and can we understand the technology? Can we use it for the betterment of mankind? Those are some of the questions that's at least one of our goals has been to educate the public. And again, is the issue, or can we use this technology not just in armaments or anything like that, but more toward other beneficial aspects of it?
Yeah.
So that I see this. It'll be interesting to see where we're going with this, Brian, from here on.
Yeah. Well, Ruben, I really thank you for your time and your expertise, and I really appreciate you joining us on our first season at Conspiracies Inc. we definitely had to get MUFON in on this, and we couldn't ask for a better representative from MUFON than you.
Oh, I appreciate
other
the
than
invitation.
Sam, other than Big Sam.
Yeah.
But-
Oh yeah, I mean, there's some really great people in MUFON, and hopefully down the road you can invite some of these people too. It's just a very diversified organization, a lot of great people on that. That's one of the reasons why I've been close to 30 years.
Well, thank you for being our ear for us to call and our center to report things. Without you guys and your affirmation, we would think we're all nuts, but we know we're not because you guys exist. So thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to having you again on future episodes.
Thank you very much, Brian.
All right, take care. Find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you find your podcasts. And all of our social media accounts are on Linktree. If there's anyone you'd like us to book or any questions you'd like answered, go to our website at conspiraciesinc.podcast.com.